Hello and welcome back to the Football Terrace. Thank you very much for tuning in this afternoon. Of course, Carabao Cup action later on today will be live at full time. I'm joined by Jessica Black again, as most Wednesdays now. How are you?
I'm good. I was muted. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm well. I'm actually quite excited about tonight's games. I've got a newfound love for the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup at the moment because I feel like it's what we should all be striving to win, along with titles and everything else. It can turn a very good season into a great season and everything else. So, yeah, want my team to win tonight, want to go through and move forward, which we're going to delve into. I'm very, very good as well. We're going to be talking about Anthony Martial and his Man United career being pretty much, for me, in the gutter as it stands right now. A big report from Dean Jones that came out today about Manchester United Football Club being prepared to allow him to move on as early as January. Of course, if the right amount of money has been offered. We're also going to be talking about managerial greatness. Is greatness too easy in the modern day spectrum? We're going to be delving into that, having a bit of a debate later around what we should be considering for someone to go into greatness. It may mean that I have to change my language. Maybe great is too weak a word. Maybe it should be God. Maybe it should be elite. Maybe it should be GOAT tier. I don't know. But we're going to look at that, and I'm going to tell you what I think. Jessie's going to let you know what she thinks as well about what should be considered in a manager being considered a great. And I feel like great is the right word, like a great of the game, the criteria for that we believe. So we're going to be delving into that a little bit later, but smash that like and share button for us today. But Anthony Martial, Jess, the report from Dean today, and I'll read what he said. He said that Anthony Martial's fears he might be priced out of a move in January despite struggling to fit into United's system. He says Man United officials have given Martial's representatives the green light to look for a new club. So he's worried that they're going to ask for 40 million and no one's going to pay it. At the same time, though, Man United have said, we are happy to sell you. Go out. The last 2 days, we saw all this news about PSG and I saw another club aside from PSG. I want to say Juve, may not have been Juve, but it was somebody that he was linked to. According to Dean Jones, who I trust, the club have said, go for it, find a club, and we'll sell you for the right money. That seems like it now, as far as Martial's career's over. I suppose my first question for you is: Are you shocked to read this?
No, why would I be? I mean, he's out of favor, and he's kind of been out of favor for a minute. 25 years old, he should be prime or just getting into his prime, and he's not really getting the minutes that he probably needs in order to kick on. So, yeah, I mean, he's kind of in between a left winger and a striker, and if you look at the players that you guys have in those positions, it's kind of stocked at the minute, especially at center forward, which I feel like is his better position as opposed to left wing. So he's not getting in over Ronaldo, Cavani, or Greenwood. So he does need to find somewhere to go. It's going to be difficult to get 40 million, because who is going to buy him for 40 million that's outside of the Premier League? But yeah, it's definitely probably time for him to go. Does he have attitude problems or something? Like, what else is there? It seems like there's something else under the surface besides just not being good enough.
I don't necessarily think Anthony Martial has an attitude problem, as in a bad attitude. I think he has a lack of, my personal thought is I think he has a lack of fight. So he's a fair weather rider. When there's his best 2 seasons at Man United came when there was very little competition for that striker role. That's when he performs well. As soon as you bring a Zlatan in, a Cavani in this case now, a Cavani and a Ronaldo, he seems to just, I think he's just happy to be part of the system, like part of the setup, as opposed to striving and fighting to be in that first team. That's the impression that he gives me. And I know a lot of Martial FC are not going to agree with it, but he's so far down the pecking order. He's behind Ronaldo and Cavani. He's behind Sancho. He's behind Rashford. He's even behind Paul Pogba now on that left-hand side. Lingard's being brought on game before him. Martial FC have just got to take, this one on the chin. Like he has not lived up to the billing. And it's going to be interesting to see which club buys him. Because I get the feeling that he's going to go to he might go PSG. They might try and get that deal done. But I get a feeling he might end up going to a middle-of-the-road sort of European team, a Sevilla, somebody of that kind of size. And he'll do well at a club like that because he'll be the main man. Very few clubs play low block against those teams. He'll have a lot of space and time to run into, and he'll look great. And what will happen, he's going to go to a club, I think, like that, score quite a few goals. It will create we should have played him more. But you know what? Like I like Anthony Martial. He's a player that I've enjoyed watching, but I have to sort of remain consistent in my views. And my view has always been, I want Manchester United to strive to be the very best team in Europe, and I don't think. So I want us to continue to strive to buy better players, better quality. And we've now got 4, 5, 6 players in that team that are better than him. So he can't play. It's got to be, his career at Man United has to be over. It's just like natural selection, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I mean, his opportunity is come and gone. He should have been trying to fight for that left wing position because Rashford's not there. If they're choosing to put Pogba in there, then you have a problem. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, what happens with him. I don't see the PSG thing materializing if the issue is that he doesn't want to fight for a place, because you're going to have to fight there as well. There's a lot of competition at that team. So you're probably right. He'll probably end up somewhere middle of the road. But again, which middle of the road team has 40 million to spend on Martial? I'm not sure, so it'd be interesting. You can't really, can you see him somewhere else in the Premier League, maybe a little bit further down the table?
Maybe. I mean, Man United have made a bit of a song and dance recently about, not wanting to sell to Premier League. They say rivals, but just other Premier League clubs as an example. But, you saw Lingard, for instance, at West Ham, just look like an absolute killer. And I look at Martial. Look, Martial's better than Lingard in my opinion, but I kind of view it in that same way. I feel like he'd do brilliantly, legitimately. I think he'd do so amazingly well at a club like West Ham, a club like Everton, where there's a lot more space for a player of his ability to get into. And it's why Lingard and Joe Willock looked so good last season, because they suddenly were playing in teams where there was all this space to run into, and it was almost this new lease of life. Wow, like look at this. For them, I think with their quality, it was like swimming in a shirt and a pair of jeans. And then suddenly, it's just holding you back. That there was less time, less space. It was restrictive for them at Arsenal and Man United. They went to West Ham and Newcastle, and suddenly they thought, no one's marking me. Like, there's all this room and space. No one's seeing. We haven't got 10 men behind the ball we're trying to break down. And look, I like Martial. I think he's a very good player. But yeah, for me, I'm not surprised to see his time at the club over. Did you think, like, when you first saw him come to Man United, did you think or feel that he'd do better than this? Do you think he would have had a better career at Man United? Or do you feel that actually this was always about the level you saw him at?
I mean, he was really hyped. So I think, I probably thought he was going to do a lot better. But at the same time, when you make the step up from, where was he at, Monaco, right?
Yeah.
Monaco to Man United, that's a completely different situation. And if you're not ready to fight, which is what you're pretty much saying, then it's not a surprise to me that he's struggling. But yeah, there was some next Thierry Henry type talk around Martial, and he's been nothing of the sort. So yeah, for sure. If you don't have the mentality, you're definitely not going to make it. And it kind of seems like he has that issue. So yeah, I mean, based on the hype, I'm a little bit like, wow, he didn't really hit those heights. But based on what I've seen, he's kind of doing what, I don't know. I've never really thought Martial was like that good, so you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I understand you. I mean, for me, I've always felt he was a very good player. I've always felt that he had the ability to go on to that. I mean, the Thierry Henry talk, every time a French player cuts in from the left, they say he's the next Thierry Henry. So I don't really mind seeing that. That's just kind of normal. But if I look at, for instance, him and Rashford and the trajectory and direction of their career, Rashford has just steadily got better over the past 3 to 4 years. And, 2 seasons running, scoring over 20 goals. Would have done even more without the injury. Like, Martial's just not progressing at that rate. And you always have an advantage with someone like a Rashford, because he is an academy player. There is almost this element of, Martial wants to leave now because he isn't getting the game time. I think Rashford, sometimes academy players are easier to keep happy and keep sweet if they're part of rotation, because it's their boyhood club. And, he's a Man United fan. So there's a different love and affinity towards it. And it can benefit a team. Well, I want Martial to go away and play and do whatever he's got to do. But he certainly hasn't hit the heights that we expected him to achieve, if that makes sense. He definitely he hasn't got close enough.
No, not at all. But you guys, the thing is that you have players like this in your team, and there's a section of the fan base that rates them and almost will die on that hill of that player, but you won't miss him at all. If you're able to get that 40 million, you're not going to care anymore. He's not really adding anything to the squad. Good player, probably have some affinity towards him because you liked him and he played with his gloves on and short sleeves and all that. You won't miss him at all. You have Greenwood, Cavani, and Ronaldo, and Rashford and Sancho. You're not going to miss him. And these are the type of moves that you kind of want to see your club do as soon as possible. Get that 40 million in and move on, especially because you didn't sell Jesse Lingard. So somebody kind of in those front lines needs to go. And if it's Martial, it's Martial. You guys won't miss him. It's really weird how sections of fan bases become more attached to a single player than it seems like the club. And you can like a player and still understand that he needs to be sold. You know what I mean? And that should be, the club is more important than just like one player.
No, I totally agree. I think that when I look at what you're speaking about there, we see so much of that in football now where, I love Paul Pogba, and I think Paul Pogba's a much better player than Martial is in terms of if you just look at their positions. But I heard people say, if Pogba leaves Man United Football Club is finished forever. What are you like? You kind of break that down to like to a deeper level for a moment, and it's like, well, what happens in 5 years if Pogba stays? What happens in 5 years' time when he retires? We finish then. Like for Man United, we've got 5 years left alive, and then we're gone. We're finished. It is absolutely crazy, but I think a lot of people live in their feelings. A lot of people live in their feelings when it comes to players, in the sense of I like Marcus Rashford. He's my favorite Man United player out of all of them because I like how he plays. But if he doesn't kick a ball this season because Ronaldo, Cavani, Sancho, and Pogba keep him at the team, I don't care. Legitimately don't care. I care about the progression of Man United, and it's important. Joshua here with a super chat says, Martial FC makes so many excuses for Martial, it gets annoying. If Rashford, Greenwood perform like they did last year, they will be asking them to be sold. Sorry. If Rashford, exactly. Yeah. Sorry, I get you. 100%. Yeah, if they drop those kind of performances, the world and his dog would turn on those. But I mean, the crazy thing is, Rashford has got better year in, year out and gets more stick and more crap from Man United fans than Martial does. And it's because a lot of people, though, Jess, you know this yourself with your fan base, a lot of people sit in the ability category. Because he has more ability than Rashford, they wait. Well, some people say that. Like
he's more all around, but when Rashford, his specific skill set, although it's not all around, it's more dangerous. You can be a really good all arounder, but Rashford has like an elite level skill in some category. It may not be technical ability, but his speed and his directness is way more dangerous than Martial's all-aroundness, especially with his inconsistency. So just because you look good on compilations doesn't mean that it translates and that makes you better than Rashford. He's not. If I'm a defender, who would I rather play against? I'd rather play against Martial than Rashford at full speed. You know what I mean?
100%. I mean, people have said that, it is how it is. And look, with Marcus Rashford, I agree that technical ability wise, Martial's better, but this is the proof in the pudding that the eye test can be very, very deceiving. It's about what you deliver and the consistency of that deliverance. And Rashford has gone to another level. He's going to come back from injury. And with the team we have now, Rashford's going to go up another notch as far as I'm concerned. That there's no sign that he's going to regress. But what I've seen is, this is what happens with fandom now. You'll get someone will nail their opinion to the mast 2 years ago, and it will be Martial is going to outstrip Rashford. And they slowly see over a 2-year period that Rashford is getting better and better, and Martial maybe stands still. We'd be very fair and say stand still. But then all they'd spend that 2 years doing is slagging off everything about Rashford because they can see it. They can see what's going wrong. And look, by the way, if Martial starts tonight and scores a hat-trick, you won't see anything other than praise for him from me, because I want him to do well in the Man United shirt. If he gets back in the Man United team and he changes Ole's mind, you won't see me disappointed, because I care about my club first and foremost. And because I care about my club first, I don't care who the best player is. I care about the best performing player when they're on that pitch. And Martial just hasn't done it for me. And it's a shame. It's a massive shame for him. But things will move on. Get your super chat questions in, ladies and gentlemen. Smash that like button for us as well. CJ here says, Martial has given us lots of great memories, but Ole saw he can't break down teams with a low block consistently. So that's why he wants Haaland to replace him. I think you've also got to look at, that's another great side to this as well, Jess. I don't know how like up you are with the way
memories. What?
Sorry,
no, go ahead.
All right, no. What I was saying is, when he joined Man United, I screamed and screamed that he's a left winger. And Martial FC said, no, my number nine. He's had the opportunity at number 9 and it hasn't worked. We signed Cavani and Ronaldo. We want Haaland long term. And now it's like, oh no, he should go back on the left. It's like, nah, guys. Like Martial himself, I think has forfeited his opportunity to play on the left because he said, I'm a forward, I'm a striker. And you guys backed him and it just hasn't worked out. I think that's where the embarrassment for Martial FC comes in, is that they were like, he will be an elite number 9. He hasn't delivered. The club's now got 2 old men that are nines in front of him. And that's why I've seen a few Martial FC like recently like really having to go at Ronaldo. They're like, oh, he ain't that great a player. He just does tap-ins. I'm like, bruv, I wish Martial just scored tap-ins and we'd be happy. It's crazy. And if tap-ins were so easy, why aren't all the other strikers scoring all these tap-ins?
Well, that's the thing about playing like in that front line in general, especially if you play through the center, you're always going to be judged on how many goals you get. That's it. You know, you can always talk about hold up play and what they add and all this. If you don't score goals, does it really matter? You know, so you kind of shoot yourself in the foot if you're like, yeah, I'm a number 9, but I'm not really scoring the goals. You know, if you're off of the left, you can add a little bit of other things to your game, a little bit of assist here, a little link up play. But ultimately, as a striker, if you're not scoring goals, you're not doing your job. You know, so kind of shoot yourself in the foot, you know, with that. So yeah, Martial is just one of those, like, you already sold Dan James, right? That was a really, really good sell for you. Martial, you could do that too. Those are French players that you're getting rid of. They're good chunks of money, you know? So I don't know why. And just the fact that you're talking about Martial FC and this FC, that just sounds so crazy to me in a fan base that should just be Man United. Like, it's just so weird to me. It's weird. Like, as much as I love Thomas Partey, I love him so much. If he can't stay fit, like,
if they
wanted to get rid, then I'd be
go.
like, forget it,
but
you know?
This is football fans. I have it all the time. You know, technically as a footballer, I'm a fan of Naby Keita. Massive fan of Naby Keita. But he's been a flop signing because he can't stay fit. Yeah, but if he was fit, he wouldn't be a flop. But he ain't. It's like, sometimes it's like cut through the BS. Has the person delivered, you know? And he just hasn't done that. And I do care about the individual players at my club. I care about defending them when I need to. But at the same time, that they haven't delivered, you know. And at the end of the day, what I find weird at Man United is we nitpick on performing players far more than we criticize underperformers. You know, you'll get people that are like, I honestly see some Man United fans more angry day to day with what Bruno did last season than Martial. And it's like Bruno is the highest goal scoring midfielder Manchester United have ever had for a single season. And they had a problem with it. Martial barely scores, but because he looks good not performing,
it's the gloves and the short sleeve shirt. Like, people got drawn in by that. I'm telling you, like, sometimes a player's vibe is more important and people get sucked in. I think it's like social media too, like, oh, he's my avatar from my profile pic and all that. I'm feeling it. He's not all that. Like, it's fine if he goes. You won't miss him at all, you know, and just don't get attached to players anymore. I just feel we've moved into this space of like following players only, and that's how you get caught up. Just follow a team. It's fine. And just players come in and out, and they don't last as long as they used to. You know, Martial probably should have been gone a while back. Like, he's just not that good. Like, I just don't get it. And that's not, I get it. In the comments, it's, well, he's better than all of your strikers. Da, da, da. That's not what we're talking about. Like, you know, when we have the Lacazette Aubameyang debate, that's fine. Martial's not that good, and he never has been.
There we go. Comment here says, yeah, Terry, Bruno, our best player, gets slated. It's a madness. It's honestly crazy. Like Ronaldo now. I was watching, I don't know who it was, and I was listening to a space, and I heard someone moaning that, yeah, I know he scored 4 goals in 3 games, but what else has he given us? 4 goals in 3 games is enough. And it's like, but we've won those games. We saw this with Zlatan at Man United. Zlatan came in, 28 goals in his first season, but it was a year, but the counters are slowed down and this is slowed down. If we do this, it was like, it took us until Cavani to replace Zlatan. And in that 2 or 3 year period, if we'd have had a Zlatan or a Cavani in that period, we would have performed better. It's honestly a madness to me, the way like certain players get defended. And I'm a Martial fan. I like Anthony Martial. But I love Man United so much more than I love any individual player at my football club. And whether it's your manager, whether it's a player, the irony in it is as well, most Martial FC lovers despise Ole. And they're like, no, we've got to get rid of him for the betterment of the club. But what about your player underperforming? Oh, no, but he's got the ability, bro. We've got to look at the ability there. Like, so, well, you don't care about the ability of a manager and what he might grow into, but you do with players. It's strange to me. Very, very strange. The inconsistency within it. But viewers, what do you think? I want your thoughts, want your feelings. Zuba here says, Jess is really beautiful. It's just sad that she's an Arsenal fan. That made me laugh. I thought it was funny. I suppose that's a shame for a lot of people, you being a Gunnar, to be honest with you. United ruin players is what Michael has said. Listen, Michael Myers is back. Good name, but all clubs sign players that don't work out. Do you know what I mean? It just is what it is.
It's normal.
Yeah.
It's normal.
It just is. I mean, you look at it this way, like when a club does well, though, it gets papered over. So like, I look at someone like Leroy Sané, and I know he's had injuries, but 2-3 years ago, that kid was being looked at as like the guy who's going to sort of go into the Ballon d'Or kind of equations. He got the injury, left City. He's probably doing okay in Germany, but I don't hear about him ripping up trees. Interestingly, I don't hear anything about Gnabry anymore either. That guy, 18-month massive hype, and it appears he's fallen off the edge of a cliff in terms of that level of output he was delivering to generate the hype. It just appears that. I don't look at it, but I just don't hear anything about him anymore. But it's like the irony in it, all those players were like regarded above Rashford, and Rashford's the only one of them that's still doing this. That's what I love about it. It's like drop. No, it's true. It's like drop. That's why I say to people, ability is great. How someone looks is great. But pull that aside, and it's like, well, what are they doing though with it? Do you get what I mean? Like, how are they delivering? What's their trajectory? And are they being productive? Because when you're an attacker, especially, productivity is gold. Absolutely gold. And someone here says Sané is balling this season. He might be. But I'm talking about balling for me. Bayern Munich especially. I mean, just scoring goals, you're assisting goals, and he might be doing that. And I hope
he's fallen off a little bit, you know.
But I hope he comes back. But the point I was actually making is, but because it was Pep did so well and won so many things, nobody was like Pep ruined Sané. Like, it's only where the team isn't winning major trophies that we attack a manager with that you ruined him. It's like, no, most of the time, it's down to the players. He's had a good start to this season, Sané, to be fair. I think it's something like 8 or 9 goal contributions in 8 games. Like, he's had a really good start to the season, but that's where he should be with a player of his ability. You know, he should be like at that level. The irony in it is, though, right? The irony in it is a lot of people will say things like, look at all the goals and assists, but at the same time say Bundesliga tax in other debates. That's the one that I love the most. Like, but we'll see. ITS says, Terry, man, you're chatting rubbish. Rashford don't sniff Sané and Gnabry. And maybe you don't on ability, but it's about deliverance. It's about deliverance. Last year, he scored double the goals Sané did. And you're one of the guys, ITS, that's come on the terrace and said Bundesliga tax is real. So if you've got a player that you think can't even sniff the jock straps of Sané, but you also think he's playing in a much weaker league, and Rashford outscored him by double, how embarrassing is that for Sané, based on your logic? Imagine that. You're a much better player. You're in an easier league, all by your definition, I test, but you got doubled in terms of your output by an injured player in the Prem. That's my issue. It's like, get your theory straight before you start throwing salt, bro.
Your logic.
Logic's got to be, but am I wrong in forget anybody else's opinion on ITS's opinion? If Sané's better by that much, that Rashford would be lucky to sniff the guy's sweaty pants, and he's in an easier league and he got outdone numbers, is that not embarrassing for Sané?
No, I hear what you're saying, because your logic really it's mostly based on numbers and numbers only. There's just some people that are going to look at Rashford and the way that he plays, and sometimes his decision making, the fact that he's probably not as great to watch on the eye as a Sané, you know, and just add that in. You know, it just is what it is, you know. So I'm kind of in between. I still think Rashford's a poor man's Mbappe, you know, but it's fine, you know.
Poor man's listen, I don't mind being a poor man's Mbappe, because Mbappe's levels, do you know what I mean? It's like, do you know what I mean? It's one of them ones. It's like, I'm not a billionaire, but I've got 100 mil. Like, I'm cool with that still, innit? I'm cool with that. Do you know what I mean? I'm cool not being a billionaire if I got 100 mil. Like, do you know what I mean? It's true. It's like, Bill Gates makes the Glazers look poor. It's all retrospect. And but there we go. Viewers, what? So go on.
I was just going to say, can you accept that some people just want to deal with eye test a little bit? Like, I know you don't rate it at all. Okay, well, but that doesn't mean that their opinion is not valid, though. Like, you know what I mean?
It does mean their opinion ain't valid.
Okay, all right.
But why would it? Why is someone's opinion on eye test valid if it isn't backed by facts?
Because it's just an opinion, and everybody has one.
So they're allowed an opinion, but they're spouting their opinion as a fact. So if I say,
well, everybody does that.
So my favorite, so I can make a claim that Lamar Obika is the best singer ever. Because on the ear test, I prefer listening to his music more than anybody else. It doesn't matter that he's only sold 3 million records in his career. He's the best then, right? Because I say he's the best. See, it don't make sense, does it?
It doesn't, but I feel like you just never look at eye tests like at all. And that comes into football because we watch with our eyes. Like,
but that's not true. Sorry, but that's not true. I use I speak about my eye test all the time. Every single time. I do.
Okay.
No, I do. I 100% do. Like, I speak about and I'll explain it. So I say about Ronaldo, one of the reasons I love Ronaldo is the directness of his play. The way he gets the ball in his first ball is to drive towards the goal. I love how that looks. One of my reasons for really enjoying Harry Kane's and David Beckham's is almost the artistry in their body movement when they hit a ball. That's all eye test. I like how they look when they play. My point is, though, if I like how someone looks when my favorite player to watch as a kid was Teddy Sheringham, an absolute beautiful baller. But I don't say he's the best striker just because he looks the best to me. If Thierry Henry is doubling his goals, I know Henry's better than him. And that's my point when it comes to these debates. It doesn't matter what my preference is. I have to look at the facts to back it up. You know, at the end of the day, you might say to me, I might actually forget you. I will say, forget. I want to make it my opinion rather than me trying to downplay yours. I prefer how Danny Ings plays football to Harry Kane. Does that make him a better striker?
No, not really.
That's all it is for me. Like, the eye testing is great. And with eye test merchants as well, what's interesting is that they nearly always use stats to attack players they don't like with eye test. And that's what I don't get. It's like Rashford doesn't complete enough dribbles in a game. That's a stat, bruv. Rashford doesn't set up enough goals. That's a stat, bruv. So it's like, you can't say I don't agree with Bruno loses the ball. Bruno loses the ball too much. That's a stat. If you don't agree with stats, don't use negative ones either. You can use no stats if you're an eye test merchant. But the problem is when you've got no stats, the eye test, they can't even explain it. It's like, I just like it. What does that mean? Just because you like it, everything needs backing up with facts.
Okay.
I think so. No, do you disagree?
I hear your point. Like, I do. I just feel like the reason why people bring eye test in is because it's a big part of football. And so that's why it's really hard to some people are just going to always think somebody else is better based on what they're seeing and what they enjoy watching. Personally, for me, like, what Neeks? What Justin Spinafra is the best winger? Oh my gosh. No, that's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that, like, even with Messi and Ronaldo, they're very, very close. I think some people just prefer watching Messi. You know, they just prefer it. So that pushes their thing just a little bit more. And I just accept it. But you like logic debates. No.
Yeah, so do you know what it is? I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with people that say that. That isn't my issue. My problem is when people can't turn up and start throwing stats as to why someone else is bad, but then don't contextualize the stats. That's okay. Yeah. Bruno loses the ball too much, therefore he's wasteful. He loses it on average the same amount of times per game as KDB. So why does no one bring it up about KDB being wasteful?
Yeah, I get that.
So it's isolated. People say Rashford makes too many bad decisions in games. I'm like, cool. How many is he making compared to his contemporaries? I want a body of work done before you make a massive assertion that someone is something. And actually, when you research it, you realize actually he's in about the same ballpark as everyone else in his position. Therefore, your eye test is wrong because you're seeing something that isn't there. And you're exaggerating it. But you can hide behind the eye test because it's my opinion. It's what I see. But if you're saying like Rashford doesn't create chances, but he's creating as many as most other players, you're either lying or your eyes are broken. Like, that's all it comes down to. Your preference on who you want to watch. I never challenge that. If you said my favorite player to watch is Mark Noble, I'd say fair. Like, I'd say I don't know why, but I'd say fair enough. If you were saying Mark Noble's a better midfielder than Paul Scholes, you've got to back it with facts. That's where I draw the line on those two things. And even with stats, though, stats you still need to delve into, because not every assist is a clean assist. Some assists are sort of like can be an overhit cross that missed the first target and then fall to a fullback.
Not even just that, though. Like shots on target and all that kind of stuff. Like, just because your shots aren't on target doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't dangerous. It could have just went right past the post. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, stuff like that. I don't really. Sometimes stats is just, it is what it is. You know? You can't really, like, you know what I mean?
Well, that's where you need the eye test, because again, statistically at the weekend, Bruno Fernandes didn't get an assist, but the cross that opened up for the equalizer was Bruno, and then Bruno put Ronaldo in for the easiest chance of the game, and Ronaldo has his shot saved. So it's like, where do you draw the line? But you know what will happen? There'll be a game tomorrow, next week, whenever, with Man United, and he'll do some little backwards pass that's like 2 yards long, and McTominay hits a power drive from 30 yards into the top corner, and he gets an assist for that. So that's why it kind of equals itself out for me, if that makes sense, because like, you get some assists that you go, Jesus Christ, that shouldn't be an assist. You didn't do anything to help really make the goal. But then there'll be other times where a player will put in the most majestic pass and the striker messes up and they get nothing for it. So that's why, for me, it's important that my eye test is, but what did I see? It isn't about the beauty of it when I look at eye test. It's what else did you do in the game? Did you create chances? Did you do your job right? Did you distribute the ball well enough in the right times? I think all those things are key. And yeah, like with Bruno Fernandes, he definitely loses the ball a lot. But is he losing the ball more than other high people that produce higher levels of creativity and goals in midfield positions? Is he losing it more than them? More. Yeah, and that's the point. You do the research compared to other high performers, and he's losing it in and around the same amount. So suddenly I stopped worrying about it as much, because I think, well, everyone in his position that creates at that level is doing it. Therefore, it's normal. So it don't make sense to moan about something.
Brian loses the ball a lot too. Like, you know, they all do, because they're trying to make risky passes and make things happen. If you want somebody with 97% pass completion, then they're probably not a great creative player, because they're probably passing backwards and sideways. You know, Salah misses the most chances is probably because he takes the most, but he's still the best striker. Do you know what I mean? Or one of the best attackers. So,
yeah,
you know, that stuff doesn't really, you still need context on statistics, but I tend to like my eye test a little bit. And sometimes my views change a little bit, because I still kind of watch football that way. You know, you're like, I don't know. I'm going to find a way to describe it. You know,
go on. I'm intrigued now. What are you going to say?
Left of center or something, and you're like way right. You know, whatever we want to call it. Like, where it's just
you cannot do that to me on the internet. You cannot say that about me on the internet. Do you know how that's going to get twisted? I am left of center and Terry's on the right wing. What are you talking about? You make it out like a gammon. No,
we're not talking about. Okay.
My God, I've been gammoned. I've been called a gammon because I like stats. That's a madness. That is a madness.
Okay, you're a stat merchant. We'll just call you that.
Someone here says, Terry, you need stats to back up performance. Every team does. Because you know why? You know, the team with the most important stat at the end of the season is having the most points. That's a stat. Sonny said this last night, by the way. See, this is why some stats are important. Of course, you need stats to back up performance. Sonny said last night, if Man United, if Liverpool to win more games in the Champions League this season, but Man United lifted the Champions League, we won it. Liverpool still had a better European season than Man United. That's eye test over facts. And who would agree? That's the madness. So it's like, imagine this. Imagine Man United play the most beautiful football all year, but we come third, and we come 10 points behind City that have more stats than us, more points than us. It would be the most ludicrous claim to go, yeah, but we were still the best team though.
Yeah.
That's my problem with eye test being taken too far. Like, you need a balance of the two things, but most people don't have it. So you need stats to back up performances. Absolutely you do. Points win prizes. Couldn't agree more. There's a super chat actually that came through from Hakeem that says, Tony gave us too many memories for slander. We will open up the lines a little bit later for people to come on, but I want to move on to the next topic of conversation. This is going to be fun. I say fun, not for everyone. Some people are probably going to get really offended and upset and cry. I want to tier
we're
greatness. I'm not putting anyone in it. We're debating what goes into the tier, if this makes sense here, because I'm trying to look at this, right? I've created some things here. I've got like God tier, GOAT tier, great tier, overrated, good. I want to create like a manager debate. But my concern is that everybody wants everybody to be called great. And I don't necessarily think we need a God tier or GOAT tier. I think great or greatest is all that comes into it. And of course, some of the greatest managers of all time, Sir Alex Ferguson, Bob Paisley, Pep Guardiola, for me, goes into that category. The likes of Helenio Herrera, as an example. Regis Michaels from who invented total football. You know, Saki. All these guys are greats. But I hear a lot of people at the moment using the word great. And I just wanted to try and define what we all consider to be correct, like right for greatness of manager. And we're talking about managers at the elite end of the spectrum, in the highest. I'm not talking about, there's a Leyton Orient manager that was great 20 years ago. I'm talking actual greatness that's, people keep saying contextualize it. And, you know, you have to look at what club they were at and everything else. I don't, and I'll get to that later. For me, I tweeted this morning, and I've always said you've got to win back-to-back league titles and a Champions League to even be, for the word great to even be put next to your name. I've kind of yielded on that a little bit and changed it slightly. And I've gone back-to-back major trophies and or a Champions League. So if you get back-to-back Premier Leagues, you've got to have won a Champions League. If you've done back-to-back Champions Leagues, you've got to have won a league title. You need a combination of those two things, in my opinion, to qualify as great. When you get into the great category, then you start adding in longevity, records, multiple trophy winning seasons. But I sort of feel like unless you've done those two things, and there's only one manager for me that I feel I'm doing dirty with that criteria, and that's Carlo Ancelotti, because I feel like Carlo Ancelotti, you know, he's won 3 Champions Leagues. Like no one's won more than him. But he's never won anything back to back. But I almost feel like there has to be a bar. And people keep telling me, well, you know, so I got a tweet from someone earlier saying, no, you have to contextualize it. What about if the club they're at doesn't have the capabilities of going back to back or whatever? What if their achievements at a much smaller club are great? And I'm sort of like, I get that, but you can leave that club. So if you're Diego Simeone, you're not expected to win at Atletico Madrid like you're expected to win at Real Madrid. You can leave and join a club that is expected to win and has the firepower. So Alex Ferguson is a great example. What he did at Aberdeen didn't make him one of the greatest managers ever. It gave him the platform to move to Man United to become the greatest one of the greatest managers of all time. So if you do really well at Porto, like Jose did, what he achieved at Porto was amazing. He won a Champions League. He won a league title, but it wasn't in a major league. He won a league title in Portugal. That gave him the platform to move to the Prem, and then on to Real Madrid, then back to, on to Inter. You know, what he then did at Chelsea and at Inter Milan propelled him into greatness. I think more so than what he did at Porto. Even though Porto was this amazing achievement, he then went to 2 of the best leagues in the world and did back-to-backs and did trebles and won another Champions League. And it's greatness. And the reason that I want to set this bar is that I want it to be an exclusive club. Not for Fergie and for Sir Matt Busby, but for all managers. And I hear things like, Wenger's still got to be in there because he improved the dietary systems in England. Everyone was eating better after him. And I think it's a fair claim. I'm not disregarding it. I think it's a fair claim. But then you start to do your research and you look at someone like Arrigo Sacchi. You look who's the person that invented fluid football. He wanted football to be less rigid and more fluid. He kind of brought this to the floor. Won back-to-back Champions Leagues. He won double seasons. He won league titles. You had Michaels, I think it might be pronounced slightly different, the Ajax manager, who invented total football. His moniker is total football. Maybe the most famous phrase ever in the game. He won back-to-back titles, Champions Leagues, when, by the way, the Dutch league was a huge league. So if a manager did something 30 years ago and their league was regarded as one of the best, we won't take that out of context at that time. You've got Helenio Herrera, who was the manager that invented mind games. He brought mind games and mind warfare to football. Fergie was looked at as a great, but it was Herrera that brought it to the floor. He won. He fits into this criteria. So I sort of look at it like, I understand that someone like a Wenger made the way people, the nutrition in the game better and everything else. But he wasn't the only manager that innovated. He wasn't the only manager that changed something about the culture of the game or the way the game was played over the last 50, 60 years. But he didn't achieve what all these other managers did in terms of Champions League, back-to-back Champions Leagues, multiple league winning, winning titles back-to-back. So I just find it really hard to put him in the same category of people that have achieved more on the field of play. That's like my thought process around it. Like, what's your take on what I've said, but also on what you think a great manager? Like, what is your criteria for great? And if Fergie's great, and if Herrera's great, and if Pep's great, like, who else should and shouldn't be in that, in your opinion?
Oh, Terry. Okay. So I hear you. The Arsene. So, okay. I like your definition. I'll put that out there. I like your definition because it makes it more difficult for people to be in that category, right? So you have to have the back-to-back, in your league, major European, cup. Yeah, those things make a lot of sense to me, I would just say that, when I was doing my research and I was looking at it, Wenger is on a lot of the top lists. Like, he's on a lot of them. And I was thinking, well, if he hasn't achieved as much as they have, why would he be on there? I don't think it's the diets or any of that. I think those are soft factors that don't really matter. So I agree with you there on that 100%. The reason why I think he's on there, and why maybe the way that you've kind of put together your, what your minimum is in order to be great, is that I look at somebody like Hansi Flick, and, let's look at him. I think he meets your criteria. He's won back-to-back Bundesliga titles and a Champions League with Bayern Munich. And I look at that and I'm like, okay, well, is he considered great and Wenger cannot be? Because Wenger did not have back-to-back Premier Leagues. He missed it in between one of his, Man United won, and then the Invincibles were after that. So he doesn't get it because of that, or because he lost to Barcelona in the Champions League 2-1, in 2006. So that's marginal. And even when he came in second, Man United won the league that year. It was like 5 points. So that's a very small margin to make a differentiation between somebody like Arsene being great or not, and Hansi Flick being great or not. Yeah. He fits your criteria, but Arsene doesn't. That's very, very marginal. And I have a hard time saying Hansi Flick fits that and Arsene doesn't, because of 5 points and not winning the Champions League against a really good Barcelona side. I mean, it's 5 points in 90 minutes. You know what I mean? Not only that, he has 7 FA Cups, so that's not nothing. When we win it, it's just a little cup. When other people win it, and I mean, he's won it a lot. 7 times. That's a big deal. Not only that, let me land really quick. How many other managers have to be in serious competition in their leagues to win it? Besides La Liga teams, if you're Real Madrid or Barcelona, who's actually really fighting for titles? When Arsene was winning Premier Leagues, he was fighting against Sir Alex Ferguson, the greatest manager of all time, and some of the best Man United teams of all time. Do you know what I mean? So Arsene was fighting a losing battle and winning sometimes, so for me, it's marginal. 5 points. The next season, we were invincible. The season 2 times, like before that, we actually won the Premier League. So the fact that it wasn't back to back, but the next season was invincible, and we're talking just 5 points in 2002 and a Champions League final, is the difference between Arsene being great, but Hansi Flick makes it, and the Bundesliga is a one-horse race. That don't sit right with me.
So I get your challenge. Firstly, let me just say I recognize FA Cups as major, not as big as Premier Leagues and Champions Leagues, but I think it's a brilliant trophy. I never disrespect it, so I'm not going to be drawn into that. 7 FA Cups is phenomenal. In terms of Flick, again, to further define what I'm talking about, my definition is a qualifier. When you're in that category, you can't judge Flick's career until the end of his career. So Flick's won something very early on, which is amazing, done a treble for God's sakes. But when I wouldn't put him above nearly all the other managers that go into that category, because you look at their body of work over a 20 odd, 30 odd year period. So, he might do nothing else in the game. And yeah, he had one season where he kind of clicks into that category, but he'll be right down the bottom of that. So I do get your point. And there's always going to be, with any kind of definition, there's always exceptions that prove rules. I think that's the thing for me, where a lot of people are saying, well, what about Ancelotti? And Ancelotti's like the only guy that I've come across so far who's like won Champions Leagues, but has never done anything back to back. So if you set a clear definition, that's why people don't like a clear definition, because you're always going to have one person that's left out. And people say you should look at it on a case-by-case basis. My issue with case-by-case, but I think you look at it, someone like an Ancelotti, someone like a Wenger, I think you can look at it on a case-by-case basis and say, okay, what have they done that puts them into that category? The problem you then have is that if you start going through all those other managers, it's like, okay, he's won those things and he was close. But what about Fergie won 13 league titles? In nearly every season he didn't win a league title, he was a handful of points away. So you start talking about that level. I know you say he's the greatest manager of all time. If you start using those same logics against all these guys that are already in this category, they had seasons where they might have won. Man United on a couple of occasions were points away from winning 4 on the bounce. So if that makes you great, and then you start comparing to people that haven't even won 2 on the bounce, I start to think, okay, well, maybe Wenger can be in great, but we need another category above it as an example, because they're not on the same playing field. And I do take your point that the Premier League is very competitive compared to, say, some other leagues. But in Wenger's time, like for a good 5, 6, 7 year period, it was Man United and Arsenal. I think from a European point of view, very disappointing. It was the fact you only got to one final when you were one of the best teams, you played the best football, is important. And I think from a manager's point of view, like especially winning the Champions League, to not have that on your CV as a manager, I think is damning when it comes to a greatness debate, because all the things you've mentioned about Wenger are brilliant, but you can find, when you do your research, as I've said, if you look at, the inventor of total football, the mind games, whatever it may be, people have invented things, they've innovated, they've won stuff, they've done it some of them have done it in multiple leagues, and they've still managed to achieve those great feats. And I just feel like, again, I'm not setting in stone about what has to be the definition, but I feel like there needs to be a qualifier of some sort. And some people might say my qualifying bar is too high, which I understand. But I don't feel like it should just be open-ended, where we take it all on a case-by-case basis, because then I think you're mixing. I know there's then tiers within tiers, but it's like, I look at it this way, and bars, by the way, can always raise. Athletes and achievements can always raise the standard for what greatness is. For Federer, Djokovic, and Nadal have done that in tennis. If you now want to be considered a great tennis player, you do what they've done, or you're not great. That's it for me now. They've realigned greatness as an example. What Lewis Hamilton is starting to do in Formula One, you're realigning greatness. And that's why I feel like but there needs to be a bar. And these guys are setting bars in their sport. So why don't we have it for managers within football? And like I've already said, I'm really not precious about what that line is, but I don't like this sort of everyone wins a gold medal. I don't like this like sports day. We do it in England here. Every kid races, they can come last and they get a gold medal. I don't like that approach. I want to see, and the reason I want to set the bar is this. It should be something we want to achieve, as we want our managers to achieve. And when you get there, it's like you've moved into that echelon of greatness now. And that's why I want there to be something. If you miss out on it, it doesn't mean they're bad managers, by the way. Arsene Wenger, brilliant manager. But I'm talking greatness or goats or God tiers, whatever the phrase for it is. I'm not overly bothered. And viewers, you can tell us what you think those tiering things should be. Maybe Wenger is a great. But if Wenger's a great,
I think he is.
What's Fergie?
But that's what I'm saying. I said Fergie is probably, unless you want to put somebody else there, I don't know. But for me, greatest manager of all time. So there is another level. But I have a hard time being like he's in the great tier, because he's above greatness. Like there is another level above that. But Ancelotti and Arsene don't make great. But Hansi Flick does if his career stops right now, which makes no sense, like in my opinion. So I don't know what that line is, because again, I believe in a little bit of, maybe you need to look at it with a little bit of context, case by case. I know it's not fair, but
But I think you
You
can look at
know,
that. I think you can look at that, Jess. And yeah, if Hansi Flick wins nothing else for the rest of his career, if not that the Football Terrace is an official body that announces who the great managers are, we're a community that talks football, and that's the whole point of it. Otherwise, but if we can't talk about this with authority, what's the point of anybody giving an opinion on the fucking internet? But it's like, I would be happy, like for instance, Ancelotti. If I was deciding, Terry, can he get in based on your criteria, based on all these things? I'd put Ancelotti in because I think Ancelotti winning 3 Champions League qualifies him. If Hansi Flick had that really good season and wins nothing else for the next 20 years, I might look at and by the way, gets opportunities at really big clubs and wins nothing. You might say, kind of, maybe he fluked it a little bit. So maybe you go, he's not going in. But I think there almost needs to be a qualifier still. That, okay, well, have they achieved any of these things? Like, how far do you go? What if someone plays the most beautiful football in the world? They're always a contender, but they win 1 Premier League. In manager wins 1 league. But it's like, oh yeah, but like, does that qualify? Like, where do we draw the line of saying you've got to have achieved something to be in the conversation? That's, and it's, again, with Hansi Flick, it's hard because he's at the start of his career. By the way, I think he might go on to do quite a lot by the time he retires. We might look back at this in 20 years and go, okay, he won 4 Champions Leagues. Like, he's definitely in.
well, I mean, he's now a national team coach. Like, I would say he's maybe would be more in that category, to be honest.
Yeah,
Maybe he comes back. It's all maybes. But again, like, I don't know what that line is, because if you say, well, Arsene has 3 Premier Leagues and like 7 FA Cups, that kind of thing. If you start just adding, then you have to add like Allegri into that. You know what I mean? If you start saying it's like just whatever, it's not back-to-backs, and I think Allegri is overrated.
Well, maybe
he's in Serie A.
Well, maybe. Yeah, again, but this is then what happens, and then I'll turn around and say, well, and then I'll turn around and say Rashford's better than Chiesa. No way. Well, one's in Serie A.
But that's why you have to do it case by case and let Antoine and Arsene in.
You don't. You set a bar and a standard, and then everyone stops debating, and we just put people in. That's it.
Uncomfortable.
Well, of course, but people are not comfortable because what people do is they sit there and they worry about who's getting in and who's not. Where for me, it's like, I don't care who's in. Maybe what we actually should do is raise the bar even higher. Maybe it should be something that literally 2 or 3 people are in, and then no one moans because nearly everyone's out of it.
I feel more comfortable if there has to be some, because it just
maybe
feels
maybe what if you've got to have won over 8 league titles and at least 2 Champions Leagues? What if it was a really high bar, like you've won in your career? So no one who's a current manager can be considered. And at the end of your career, a minimum of 8 top flight league titles and at least 2 Champions Leagues. Forget back-to-backs. What if it was that? That's a much higher criteria. It's a much harder criteria.
I think it has to, something like that. Like at least two Champions Leagues, I think. At least 2 Champions Leagues.
Yeah, so again, like I said, I'm not precious, but I want a bar. I want a bar that's set that if you don't achieve it, you don't even get debated. Like there has to be something, and maybe we add different nuances. Maybe we add different nuances in there. Maybe it's a League Cup thing. But 1 second, because I've got a lot of super chats to do. Viewers, I want your views. What you've said in the poll? I said 71% of you have agreed in the poll that they should have to have won a Champions League and defended a major trophy to be considered. So that's cool. But if we don't use my original definition, what should the standard be? I actually agree that we should wait till a manager is retired before we talk about greatness with them, because Flick's a great example. He's won something early. What's he going to do for the rest of his career? We don't know. But what should the standard be? And if you think it should be case by case, I want to know why. But I've got some super chats to do here. Frenchie says, if you outperform with a lower budget and a weaker roster on paper, can't you be considered a great manager compared to teams with bigger names? Do you know what I'd say, Frenchie? You've got a 20, 30-year career. So when Fergie did what he did with Aberdeen, he moved to Man United. Jose with Porto, and by the way, achieved the madness, then went to the big teams. I think you have to go to a big club in a big league and deliver, because the pressure that comes, you take over Real Madrid, 2nd place isn't good enough. You take over Chelsea, you can be a European champion, come 4th in the league and be sacked. So that pressure is what separates, for me, the very good managers from the great managers. So yes, it's something that when you're in that tier of greatness, you can throw that in and go, like one of the things that Pep doesn't have. He hasn't taken over a team that's struggling, like a fallen giant or a minnow, and turned them into a European champion or a league title winning team. That's something that Jose, as an example I'm giving is that so when you're in the great category, that's how I think you start separating the greatest from others, if that makes sense. But in your career, like Diego Simeone is a great example. What he's done at Atletico is great. Join a club that's meant to win, that's expected to win. What can you do there under that level of pressure? That's when I think that's when you separate not the weak from the strong, but that's where you separate the true greats. I've got to jump into some more super chats. I'm really, really sorry because I've missed so many of them while we were talking. MF2 says, sorry, it isn't 90 minutes against Barca. The fact Wenger had 20 attempts at a Champions League and got to one final is a mark against his greatness, is what FM2 thinks. The Red Wolf says Brian Clough is the GOAT, back-to-back European Championship managing Nottingham Forest. Yes, Nottingham Forest were a very good team back then, though. So again, that level of context must be applied. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. It's not Nottingham Forest. He didn't take over a Championship team and win the Champions League with them. Terry, you're overthinking it. Arsene's era had a battle of Fergie dynasty and the Jose era. Yeah, so based on that, I mean, what does that mean, though? I mean, every era has great managers, though, and that's the point. So go on, you got your answer.
No, see, I mean that's my thing. Is when I looked at it, I'm like, yeah, but do these other managers, especially in their leagues, like in particular, looking at the Bundesliga, you're looking at the French league, do they actually have to compete really to win the win their league trophies? I don't think so. You know, and you look at Arsene, he was able to win things during Sir Alex Ferguson's pomp, you know, so I think that you have to add that in a little bit, because for me, winning back-to-back Serie A's is not the same as winning 3 Premier Leagues, albeit they're scattered about, you know, when you're dealing with the level of competition. But I know you don't want to add context because then you can't get a clean line.
No, I'm happy to add context as long as we add that context to every other debate. That means Premier League players are all better than Serie A players. All Premier League managers are better than. So Fergie, like, is the greatest you've said. How much more does that elevate Fergie if he won 13 Prems? So he's 13.
I don't have a problem.
And I'm not saying you do. My point is that your context is fine. But if I then tried to use that same logic to say, I know Pep Guardiola's got as many trophies as Fergie, but most of them weren't won in England, therefore Fergie's still better, everyone would tell me to shut up and sit down. So that's my point about context, is people are happy for it to get Wenger in or happy to get Ancelotti in. But when I turn around and say, well, based on that, Pep can't be better than Fergie because a lot of his trophies won at Barcelona and Bayern Munich in one-horse races, they'll say, no, you can't take his trophies away. So again, I'm happy to concede as long as we take away all the trophies that managers like Pep and. So by the way, Klopp now doesn't have back-to-back league titles because he did it in Germany, not England. I'm happy to do that. Mm-hmm.
All I really wanted to say is that there's people in the comments saying, well, Serie A was big in the early 2000s. And I'm like, that's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about the difference between Allegri winning Serie A in, like, you know, the 2010s, where we know that league has been dead since then. You can't make him better than Arsene because he had back-to-backs in a dead league. I understand that Serie A was big in the early 2000s and the 90s. I get that. That's not what we're really debating here. You know what I mean? So you have to add that context, because I don't see it. Like, especially like the French league and stuff, you might as well throw those in the bin.
And I think your point is fair. So maybe that's the context that gets added in around, because we know the Dutch league used to be a very, very strong league and it no longer is. So winning back-to-back league titles now is different to doing it in then. And maybe, like I said yesterday, when it comes to great teams, you separate this into eras. So maybe you do a tier for every 10 to 15 years and you differentiate it. That's why Fergie's the greatest. A man's going to go into 40 different years. What a legend. What a legend. 40 years, he did every tier.
Okay,
so maybe it's that. Who's greater, Del Bosco or Fergie? It's a really good question. I mean, it's based on what we just spoke about there. It depends on the strength. We're arguing the strength of those leagues at the time that they've won trophies is maybe it. And like I've said, I'm not precious. But I need a bar. I don't like this. Anybody can just be considered. I don't want everyone getting a gold medal. Unique achievements can be a decider, invincible seasons, trebles, etc. Yeah, I think uniques are a definite thing. I think that's something. I mean, I'm writing this stuff down, by the way, people. I'm not.
That's why I was saying that. I was like, okay, well, so Arsene didn't get the back-to-back. I get that. But the very next season, he got invincible. And I understand a lot of them were draws and all of that, but it's still something it is special, just like treble is special. And we're not saying which one is more special. It just is. Like, you know what I mean?
Okay, yeah, okay. So, but do you still think, before we're going to add Daniel and KJ in a minute, and I'm going to do some more super chats, do you still think, though, that there has to be a pre-qualifier of a Champions League in it? Because the Champions League, the one thing I think we're all going to agree on is the Champions League's always been hard to win. To be a 20-year, have a 20, 30-year managerial career and not win it, especially when you were a Prem manager. So, we've all just sat there and said how good and hard the Prem was, meaning we're the best. To not win it, does that not exclude Wenger or any Premier League manager that hasn't won it?
I mean,
or are we saying you can be one of the greatest managers ever? Because this is what we're debating here. Forget the name of the tier for a minute. You're going into the greatest ever category. And
that's why I think you should break it up. That's my thing. I think you should break it up. I think because saying that Arsene was just good feels like we're underplaying it a little bit.
Very good. Very good. Very good.
No, I think you have to get a great and then something a little bit higher than that. Like,
so I've got to check. So basically what you're saying, Jess, I've got to change my language.
Maybe.
I'm cool to do that. I've some super chats. I've got one here from Joshua Jack, who says, Jess, Jules Graham is a bigger manager than Wenger. He won everything at Arsenal, including the Cup Winners' Cup. Wenger didn't. Excuse me. Deborah says, if you didn't have a ridiculous amount of injuries, Klopp would have won back-to-backs. Liverpool FC forever. Thank you, Ross, for becoming an official Academy member of the channel. Aiden says, who's greater? Oh, I've already had that one. Harold here is one of our members, celebrating 7 months today as a legend and super fan. Says, if you are only second to the greatest ever, would have been the best without him, is Wenger versus Fergie, you would be great in theory. I'm in Terry's camp, but exceptions. And by the way, my camp is there are exceptions. I always believe in exceptions, but we need to be very careful about what we accept, because you know what I'm like. I'm going to hold everybody to their word. And then when Serie A is rubbish, when someone comes on and tells me that Chiesa is better than Rashford, I can't hear it anymore because it's a rubbish league. So I need consistency, my people. That's what all I care about is consistency. And if I'm being inconsistent, call me out on it, because I'm not impervious to making mistakes. I'm a human being as well. Do you know what I mean? Paul Ross here says, in Italy, it's a defensive league, hard to break down because they just sit back. Well-known. Serie A and the Premier League are top 2 hardest leagues. The rest are crap leagues, is what Paul Ross believes. Twisted says, great managers don't leave their clubs in a mess. Touche. It's a joke. It's a joke, everyone. It's a joke. He's messing. The Artful Dodger. Where's your comment gone? Here it is. The Artful Dodger says, Fergie was great domestically, but underachieved in Europe. Only 2 Champions Leagues in 30 plus years. Do you know what's interesting about that? It's a fair claim. You're forgetting what he won. He won Cup Winners' Cups. He won European trophies with Aberdeen. So if you look at his career, he has about 5 European trophies. So you are wrong, because you're just thinking of Man United manager. But equally, though, when you start looking, only 3 managers have won 3 Champions Leagues. What's his name? I can't remember his name. Zidane is very early on in that time period. Zidane's very early on that time period, but you look at the others that have done it, they've been managing 20 plus years themselves. Like, you look at all the other managers with 2 Champions Leagues and click on their profiles and see how long they've managed. They've all retired and not won anymore. You know, Jose's been around 20 years now and he's got 2. But Jose won his first two in his first 8, 9 years. And oh my God, he's won 2 in 8 years. Fergie had 2 in 30. What if Jose manages for another 10 years and never wins another one? Suddenly it levels out. So I think what you need to be really mindful of is research who's won more than 1 Champions League and then look at the span of their managerial career. No one's won more than 2. Most people manage the majority of their, from when they retire through to when they retire from managing 50, 60 years of age. So it's the same body of work. So I don't think it's as bad as you're making out, but I do hear your comment there. Again, I was just researching it earlier and whatnot. Lamar here, and then we're going to bring the guys on, says, Arsene was great. You need to state levels of greatness, which is why, though, we had this here. So maybe we add the tiers in. Maybe Wenger does go into the great tier. But then again, what I still need is what differentiates great from God. I need to know. I need to understand the pre-qualifiers that differentiate it. Maybe it's the Champions League. Maybe it's back. Maybe it is. Someone like a Wenger goes in great. You have to win a Champions League to even be considered for God tier. And then to be considered for the GOAT tier or whatever one's above it, you have to do back-to-back Champions League or three-peat league titles. I'm just saying there has to be something that elevates you or beyond just you won it.
That's what I'm saying, because you could add Arsene and Ancelotti into, the great tier, whatever you want to do, because you're going to have two above it anyway, because they have, something special or whatever, because Ancelotti is different and Arsene is different, and then have extra stuff above that. That seems fair. Like, okay. I'm not trying to make Arsene the best thing in the world. I'm just saying it doesn't feel right, him and Ancelotti being left out, even though they still did great things.
Yeah, no, and I understand that. Someone I do want to shout out, though, like really, really quickly, because when I looked at this guy, I didn't realize how short his managerial career was. Bob fucking Paisley. Legit.
Yeah.
Bob fucking Paisley. And I'm sorry, the geezer managed one team for it was 9 years, but in 9 years, he won 6 league titles and 3 Champions Leagues. Absolute fucking, again, I don't need to debate Bob Paisley. He goes into God tier without it. It's just anyone tries to say Bob Paisley not in the God tier, I'm blocking you. Do you know what I mean? Because what he did in that 9-year period was just incredible. But so again, proving again, I'm not sitting there being biased. I'm not going, right, how do I play what Bob Paisley did down? I'll recognize greatness, but there we go. Right, we're going to bring KJ and Dan on for the last 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes or so of this stream and try and set these standards here. Hit that like button for us, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get the boys on now to have their say. Yes, gents, how you doing?
Bloody hell, fam, flip me. That was a long conversation just to hear crying and moaning about, but this and that and the third. Listen, there needs to be something set. Otherwise, I can argue Claudio Ranieri can be in there because he did something special. You know what I mean? Like, Di Matteo can be something there because he did something special. People do something special every few years. It's flipping great. It's fantastic. But it doesn't mean they're automatically getting to certain places because it was special. Yeah, fam, if I was a football manager for 1 year, won the Champions League, flip me and put me in the great tier. Screw it.
Are you done?
I hear that. Dan, I know we kind of spoke a little bit earlier on today, just by sort of tweet that. What's your take on this? And like I've already said, so we don't go over old ground, happy to change my language because I'm not doing this to try and prove myself right. I'm doing this because I'm sick and tired of there being no definition. And I like to define things. I think definitions are important. I think there can be exceptions. But what's your take on greatness? Should greatness be like the qualifier section and there's I'm just saying GOAT and God are above it. That's just stupid words for it. But should that exist in your opinion? And what do you think the qualifier should be?
No, look, everyone makes very, very valid points. I think where I do agree with Jess is the language does matter. Like, for example, when we do talk about the world-class players, people tend to find there's some people have more leeway and more room to allow a world-class player into their group than others. Some people are more strict than others, and where their strictness comes from, I don't know, innit? Obviously, it's tough, innit? Because obviously, I rate Wenger a lot. I think what's forgotten as well, I think he won a league title with Monaco as well during the time where the French league obviously wasn't one of the best leagues in the world, but there were a lot of big teams in the French league at the time. Monaco were one of the good teams, and he managed to win it there as well. Won league titles in England. I do think how his career ended almost plays a part in how he's viewed as a manager. Whether you think that's unfair or not, I don't know. But to answer the question directly, I just think it's tough, innit? Because I think the Wenger-Sir Alex debate isn't even a debate. And I don't think the Mourinho-Wenger debate is even a debate. Because, for crying out loud, Jose Mourinho won 2 league titles during the Wenger and Sir Alex supremacy. He left and then came back and won another league title. And in that time, Arsene Wenger didn't win a league title.
Yeah, so, and just on that point, just to bring it round, it's I'm happy to change my language. I'm really not precious. It's if Jose's a great and he did that, and everything else he's won in his career, I can't have Wenger in that whatever category Jose's in or Fergie's in. Wenger, as an example, cannot be in it.
I think
can't be.
For me, just as a final point, KJ, I think for me, Wenger is, and it comes down to language. I can't even lie, but Wenger is a top manager, but I don't think he's an elite manager. But it's tough. It's actually tough. But I still think I rate Wenger highly. It's the same thing with Vicente Del Bosque, like we spoke about. Like I think he doesn't even get mentioned, and he won 2 Champions Leagues, he won a World Cup, won a Euros, won 2 league titles with Real Madrid as well. They weren't back to back, but he won 2 league titles. I mentioned to you, I think Simeone is great. Fair enough, you rebutted the point by saying you think he needs to move to another club, and you know what? That's fair. I actually like that. Cool, he needs to move to another club. But for me, I think what he's done with the resources, especially breaking the dominance of Real Madrid and Barcelona, I think that's a huge thing.
And I think that's a really good point. And I think that's why one of the things I would say is I don't think current managers should really be included. Yeah. If that I think when we tier, because like Simeone's career hasn't finished yet. So it's really quite hard to say what he's going to do.
And if you're going to count Arsene's end of his career, because technically you could have just ended it like after 2006, and then we could have just looked at that, and just made a decision. Like if you're going to give Arsene's entire career and he's going to be dinged for not winning Premier Leagues throughout his entire time, or kind of tapering off, then yeah, you have to wait because we don't know what's going to happen.
So
fair. I think
I do get that, and as I say, like what I want to reiterate, I'm not trying to exclude managers because of particular clubs they're in. Like I'm just not. Like I've sat here like in the last few days, I'm like, yep, like Klopp goes into my category as great. Again, I think there's 2 things I would separate. There's retired great and then contemporary great, and I look at them different. Like right now, who are the greatest managers around and whatever. So I've kind of changed the tiers here. I've got good tier, top manager, great, GOAT, God. Like,
okay, so the God is just going to be like 1, and then the GOAT is like
or I mean, there could be more than one.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't
be...
believe in multiple lords, so no.
I mean,
I think you have to have. I think you have to have one person that stands out from the rest in order to make it make sense.
That's Fergie, cool, right? No, I mean, I'm not even picking. I'm just saying, like, that's my preference, right? And as I say, preferences don't matter; it's facts. And that's why I'm saying set the standard, because someone might set the standard and it's Bob Paisley at the top. I will accept it as long as we don't. Like I said earlier, if we start saying how bad Serie A is and we shouldn't count winning league titles there, like winning the Prem, we have to put that across all spectra and mannerism of assessing people. Do you get what I mean? And that means, like, by that same logic, does that mean like Ole coming second in the Prem makes him one of the best managers in Europe?
No.
But by that logic, that means he's better than someone who won Serie A if it's not worth as much as winning the Prem. Like that's why we need to be careful.
I disagree with other managers.
I think you have to win it, and then.
Okay.
I disagree with Justo in terms of the fact that, like with the Simeone thing, where you win Serie A and you can win that back to back, you need to do something elsewhere to prove yourself. Because as a manager, you do get the top jobs quite frequently than as a player who's moving around or would have to move, if that makes sense. So like Simeone, who has to move to maybe show that he's one of the greatest of all times. I think if you win Serie A back-to-back or win a treble managing Bayern Munich like Hansi Flick did, we still need to see him as a club manager for another club, if that makes sense. So Nagelsmann, for example, we can't really judge his career as a manager because he's moved from Leipzig to Bayern Munich and he's expected to win at Bayern Munich. So after Bayern Munich, now we can see how his career plays out.
Yeah, there's so many factors to it. Like I look at the Paisley thing and you think to yourself, like Paisley done so much in 9 years, which was absolutely like tremendous and amazing. And then when you speak to like professional managers, and this is where it's like learning and being educated, they just talk about, when they speak about Fergie, I remember watching Pep speak, and I think it might have been Trapattoni. And they said, like, what's amazing about Fergie? And he was like laughing when he said it. He's like, I can't believe he keeps winning major trophies at his age. And after all these years, at the same place, how has he managed to keep everybody and himself motivated? And I think that's one of the most underappreciated elements of his greatness is, I remember Ryan Giggs talking about it in an interview, just saying how he talked to colleagues of his or friends of his at other clubs. And when he would explain to them how you'd win the Premier League for the second time on the bounce and you've just done an FA Cup double, and how training was when you arrived back in the summer, it was like you hadn't won anything. But like Fergie being able to maintain that, that's why going back to back for me is such a big qualifier for like managers' greatness, is because getting the team to be brilliant 2 seasons running in a league which is considered the hardest thing to win. It's so hard. And I do get the point that some years you miss out by a small amount. But again, if we use that logic, then that means we've got to consider the 07 to 2010 team as we might as well call it a 4P, because we missed out by 1 point by doing 4 on the bounce. So essentially, by that logic, it means we won 4 on the bounce. But we didn't.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that means that we basically won. No,
I'm not saying you are, and I get your point, because that was a very, very good Arsenal team. But you get my point by cutting things off, because we can always look at a team like Liverpool theoretically could say they won 2 on the bounce because they came second one year with 97 points, but we're not going to allow that because they didn't win it.
Yeah,
do you get and that's what all it comes into it for me. I understand there's nuance, and I understand there's. I think context is important. Is, for instance, with Ajax, the quality of their league when Cruyff was winning stuff, that when Michaels was winning stuff, that I don't know how you pronounce his name correctly though. Is it because I listened to it in English and they said Michaels, and then I listened to it with a Dutch pronunciation and I can't do it. It's just my mouth slurs too much. But it's like Ajax were a brilliant team then, and the league was like ridiculously good. Artful Dodger here says Atletico has spent more on players than Liverpool and Real Madrid in the past 5 years, 7th most in Europe. The notion of them being paupers and working with limited resources is a lazy myth, is what the Artful... Sorry, mate.
No, I was just saying include like the players that they also sold and whatnot, and how they did shrewd business, like good business. Chelsea, for example, are 3rd in the most sold players in the last 10 years, something like that. But we also buy a lot. So, yeah, and all in all, I think the best criteria, in my opinion, is let's look at how long they stayed at the top 4, so their peaks. So let's compare how long they stayed at the top 4. That's where I think Wenger falls short. So, for example, I would say Wenger was at the top for about 7 years, from 1996 to about
2000.
I'd probably say it was about 9 to 10 years he was at the top.
Yeah, 10 years. Do you know what 10? Because you go backwards as well to France.
So you had 10 at the top, and then
10 years, and then he fell off. In comparison to someone like Jose Mourinho, who I think was at the top for longer than 10 years in my head, anyway. So, hey.
Oh, hello, David. I know we're right at the end, but yeah, no, I think that's fair. So, like Paul here says, for me, Wenger goes in good. He stayed at one club for over 15 years, and during, by the 2014, done nothing really. Nothing really feeds. FA Cups here and there, but nothing big after that. Look, I think the peak thing that feeds in with the peak thing that Daniel was kind of alluding to there. What have I just pressed? It's done that to the background. There we go. Look, I do get you on that, Paul. I understand where you're coming from with that one there. In terms of, these things now, I'm kind of happy with them. I just want to try and settle, though, on a criteria, because I'm really key on this. Because what I want to do when we debate this is I want the criteria to be set, and then we kind of debate people up or down a little bit, thinking, did they really qualify? Like, to being great, is it fair to say you have to have won a Champions League at the elite level? Is that a fair... Yeah. Like, maybe I'll lower my limits, if that's what I'm saying here, like from back to backs and everything else. I'm happy to do that. Would you say you've got to be even considered great if you've got to win a Champions League?
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
No.
Like,
if not, you can do the if you haven't won, what's the equivalent of winning a Champions League? So if you've won 3 league titles, can we say that's an equivalent?
That is not the equivalent of one.
No, but I'm saying, would there be an equivalence to doing that, but with one Champions League?
Would you trade all your FA Cups for one Champions League?
Yeah, of course. I would.
So then the FA Cup.
How about then? I keep telling everyone I'm willing to concede. How about you've got to have won either a Champions League or at least 2 league titles in an elite league? That's
what I'm saying. Or you say a Champions League and or back-to-back titles.
No. The two leagues and the one Champions League or the one Champions League is fair, because then you got multiple managers who could be argued in that space without it being like a cut-off for managers who actually are good enough. So Wenger could go in there
So
and
is
other managers
Allegri?
can go in
That
their
means
team.
Allegri there then.
Yeah, Allegri's there, but Allegri just thinks he's overrated. But overall, he's a
Yeah, no,
very good
Allegri
manager.
won. Allegri won Serie A with AC Milan as
That means
well.
we're
AC
saying
Milan,
that.
you know what I mean?
I mean,
So,
he won
Ra-
like 7 in a row or something. So
Yeah,
With-
I just think he's over.
yeah.
You know, that's
So
just a
Rafa's
personal
in there
thing,
as
I
well
guess.
then, yeah. Because Rafa's won 2 league titles. He won 2 league titles with Valencia.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Rafa
Yeah.
for me, I look at that exactly. Rafa's a great example. I think Rafa can go into that great in his career can go in can be considered in that. And then it's what will happen when we do the tiering show is someone might go, nah, overrated though, because he was good for 5 years and then for 20 years he's been a waiter. Do you know what I mean? And he's sort of like, okay. But I think he goes again, I think he could qualify for that. I think though, like for me, when I start looking at GOAT and the God stuff, that's when maybe we start looking at, as you say, back-to-back 3-peats, how many Champions Leagues you've won and stuff like that. I do, and then I think when you start going from GOAT to God, that's where maybe you start taking Jesse's situations of, yeah, but when you didn't win it, how close were you? So as we say with Fergie's career, I think 5 European trophies, and they were all major trophies. When he was winning Cup Winners' Cups, that was huge. When he won one with Aberdeen, it's like 5 of them, like 2 or 3 defeats in finals, and his league campaign was amazing. Barring I think 1 year when we came third, he challenged for the title in nearly every season for 25 years. That's when I think when you're separating the very best, that you can bring in those kind of arguments of even when we didn't win, we were 2 points off, or we lost on like fuck, he just won league on goal difference. Do you know what I mean? Like, but I think maybe that's when that sort of stuff comes in. I mean, I feel quite comfortable with that. I don't know about you lot as a general start.
I hear that, but what do you think about then the longevity thing? Because what if a manager just decided not to manage as long? So is that taken away? Because for example, for me, I think Vicente Del Bosque is one of the greatest managers, and I think he does rival Fergie. Yes, fair enough, Fergie longer in the club game, and I get it. If longevity is an argument, then I'm totally fine with it.
I think it. Go on, KJ. Go on.
But I said, like, you could just exclude everyone's bad periods and just go for peaks. But again, that's not fair, in my opinion, because kind of like if you're gonna highlight someone's like greatness, you gotta also highlight their shortcomings, and then therefore it balances out to what you actually are. Del Bosque, he's done amazing things, so there's no reason why he couldn't be in that argument. So it has to be length of time.
Yeah, I think the problem is if you exclude longevity and people that maintain the longevity at the highest level, it's this case of if Fergie retired in the year 2000, again, the world's changed in the last 21 years. So say he retired in 2001 after doing the 3-peat, he would have retired and everybody would have looked at his Aberdeen and his Man United career and gone, Jesus Christ, he's won, I don't know the number off the top of my head, like something like in a sort of 50, in like a 12-13 year period, it would have been like seven league titles, 3 major European trophies, like 2 doubles, a treble, and a 3-peat in the Prem. And it would have been like, wow, look at that in a 12 to 15 year period, and it would have looked better. You spread that over another sort of 13 years of managing. You then throw in all the other things that we've used to defend other managers. More teams becoming competitive, more money in Europe, Chelsea's money into the game. Him getting older and having to manage the change. Like the one thing Del Bosque didn't have to manage is Fergie was managing players in the late 80s, and how you spoke to men spoke to each other in the 80s was very different to 2013. Fergie like maintained the ability as a man to adjust himself to contemporary times. So if you get rid of longevity, you remove some of the brilliance that enabled him to look at a lot of the old managers that go past their sell-by date because they can't interact with young players anymore. Do you get what I mean? Like 10 years ago, Mike Phelan was considered a really good number 2. No one rates him anymore because he's a dinosaur. Like, Jose's gone. Can't handle people anymore. So I think we have to keep it. But look, I think we can discuss that more on the day when we actually tier this. But I wanted to go through it here. Mohammed says, so to expand on this, where the international managers rank, how much weight the World Cups get. It's a hard one because it depends on who they manage, the country they're in charge of. A lot of the big kind of European clubs tend to use managers from their own nation, generally from their own nation, which is fair. But obviously, if you're France, it's a lot easier for Deschamps to win a World Cup with France than it is for Deschamps to win it with the Ivory Coast as an example. So you have to look at who they managed and how good those squads were at those times. How good how about the French manager that was managing 10 years ago, where the French had no players, like they didn't have any, like they didn't have the same plethora of world class. I think it's a lot harder.
Ain't it the same argument as teams who have clubs and their teams are crap for 1 minute, then they get money, and then boom, like they got good players now. So
to a degree, but there's the difference is when you're a club manager is generally the career can be longer. If you're an international manager for 30 years, by the way, and you never get offered a job at a major nation with a really good squad, that's a reflection of you in itself. If you're like a world-class international manager, a country's going to come in for you. That the point is, if you're sitting there now and says to me, Graham Potter's a world-class, but what he's achieved at Brighton puts him near. I'm not saying you are. I'm giving a really warped example. If Graham Potter is really as good as everyone thinks he is, he will get a chance at a big club. And then it's what you do with that big chance and big opportunity. Like there was a time in England where David Moyes was looked at as someone that could step up to that next level. He was spoken about throughout the early noughties up until Fergie retired. Oh, Moyes could be this next big thing. Didn't work, did it? You know what I mean? He went to Man United and was caught reading self-help books on the aeroplane because he didn't know how to manage. Like, I'm just saying. So I do get the point. Internationals is just another kettle of fish, though. Fergie is amazing, but he would have been sacked at Real Madrid and Milan with that European record. Maybe Fergie would have changed his approach. Maybe, again, I'm only speculating here. Maybe Fergie managed it differently. Maybe he goes for a more intense way of managing, an intense way of playing to get the best out of players in a shorter period of time, to squeeze everything he can out, rather than looking at the longer plan. Who knows? I'm just saying.
Or maybe the clubs realize that winning how many Champions Leagues for one manager over an extended period of time is flipping difficult anyway. So screw it.
Well, maybe if Fergie had gone to 2 or 3 different clubs in different countries, he'd have won 3 or 4 Champions League, 5. It's the fact is he did 30 years in management and won 2 Champions Leagues. Only 3 managers have won more than him, and only by 1. So it's not like as an individual, it's not like you've got 30 managers on 4 or 5 each, and Fergie's sitting there on 2. It is what it is. But listen, guys, I really do appreciate everyone that's come on and had their say. Imagine if a league has won 10 out of 14 years. How would it be perceived today? Jose spent 600 million and Pepper spent $1 billion. What are you guys talking about? Recency bias is crazy. Cool. Factor in backed and budgets. Cool. We can do that when we do the tiering, no doubt. Fergie is amazing, but he would have been sacked by Real Madrid. We had that one already. Listen, I really enjoyed the conversation, though, people. I'm back after the football finishes today. Everyone who's tuned in, cheers. David, Daniel, KJ, thanks for coming on. My co-host today, Jess, thank you very much indeed. Do me a big favor and smash that like button before you leave, ladies and gentlemen. Jock Steen should be mentioned. He will be when we do the proper tiering system. I'll give that one to David because David loves the old players and managers. There we go. Listen, everyone who's tuned in, thank you. Take care. Goodbye. God bless you.